Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. John Brown, CEO of Be Fulfilled, here today on the podcast. Thank you for being here. This is No Instructions, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Be Fulfilled story and John's background. So
thanks for having me, Chad. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So, John, the purpose of the podcast today is to really help listeners and viewers learn from your story. And as you know, you've been an entrepreneur now for a while, have a really cool story with Be Fulfilled and other businesses. And so let's go back to the beginning. Tell us about what you were doing, when your journey sort of started as an entrepreneur. What was your last job?
All right. So my journey started, I've always been an entrepreneur. Never really had a traditional job in high school, always hustled, found little side gigs, spray painted curbs,
I did that too.
Yeah. I was making like $30 an hour and my friend's working at like Blockbuster making $5 an hour at the time. I was like, dude, why would anyone work a normal job? So I always had that mindset. Graduating from college in my last year, I went to BYU and I was really excited and looking for what was next. And this was about 2004 and the job market was a little rough. I thought I'd go into consulting and it just didn't feel right. So I ended up getting an opportunity with some family who was just starting a new company and they wanted me to do sales. So I started doing sales, and I remember it was my finals at BYU. I had a information systems class, and I had a conflict. I was about to close my largest deal in St. George, and I had to deliver them the product. I missed my final to make this sale. And I go back and talk to my professor. I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I just started a business with some family. I had to do this. And he was like, oh, cool, no big deal. This is what the business school's about. Go ahead and I'll give you time to retake the final. And I did, graduated, everything was good. But I almost didn't graduate based on hustling to try to make a business work. So that was really the journey of my adult entrepreneurial journey, was graduating graduating college and almost missing a final.
Yeah, that's awesome. So take us to the point where you started and quit your job at some point. And you saw a problem. So tell us a little bit about that and that journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about Be Fulfilled today. But you guys kind of had an interesting story about how you got started with actually a clothing company.
Right. So 2007 comes around. My wife, Courtney, decided she wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. So double entrepreneurs, which is fun and, double the risk. Why not?
Right.
And she had this idea to start a clothing company called Sense of Style. She did it on her own from 2007 to about 2011. And at that point, she decided she wanted to take her whole business model and make it an online model with an e-commerce model.
Right.
And that was kind of my experience. I had some of that experience coming from, I graduated with a degree in information systems. So I helped her there, but I was still working my job. And 2014 came around, her business had blown up. She'd had like year-over-year growth of 100, 200%.
Wow.
And she was doing really well. But it was also starting to stretch where she needed some more strategic help, bigger picture, and we weren't finding or able to hire the right employees at that point to help us with that. And I made the decision in 2014 to quit my job, which I was the VP of sales at, with that same startup company that I almost dropped out of college to help get started.
Yeah.
I'd been there a decade, and I felt like it was time for me to move on. We'd been through 2 private transactions, and I just felt like everything had shifted, and I wanted something different. So I came on as COO at her company, Sense of Style, and we really started to dive into strategy together and really look at what made the company unique and what did we need to do to keep it growing.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning storyline of where Be Fulfilled came from.
Yeah.
A couple years later, we were doing some strategy with a guy by the name of Rob Ryan. He's a real big entrepreneur from Silicon Valley. And he taught us this idea of the STEM model where you look at yourself as a flower, and it's a sunflower model, and you look at all the petals around the sunflower and you say, what is our core business? What are we really good at? And Courtney and I really asked ourselves that question for about a year. So what are we really good at? And we decided at the end of the day, there was a new business that could come from that, could be one of the petals of the sunflower that we wanted to experiment and try. And that business is what is Be Fulfilled today.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you're running this business with your wife, seeing a lot of success, really quickly actually, and in that whole process, you're learning a lot, right? You're learning a lot about sourcing, you're learning a lot about marketing, you're learning a lot about design. So tell us what that looked like, that day to day at Sense of Style. Like, what were the things that you guys were getting good at?
Yeah, so my wife and I had a really good division of labor. She was really good at the marketing, and operations and making things happen was where my strength came in. And then learning how to sell that as a package, as a product.
Right.
And so at Sense of Style, we really dove into the data to see what were the top selling products. And instead of buying those products from manufacturers out of LA, we decided to design and manufacture ourselves overseas.
Right.
Added 30 to 40 points of margin, allowed us to go deeper, allowed us to really reflect what the demand numbers were showing us to have a better sell-through and make much better margin.
Yep.
So as we saw that opportunity came up, we really refined that over a couple years at Sense of Style. Hey, this is how we do it. These are who we work with. This is the right way to do product quickly and efficiently. And that model turned itself into what is Be Fulfilled. How do we help other people do a similar thing? How do we help them look at their data, look at what they're good at, and to design and develop products that match and overlap with their core strengths?
So tell us a little bit more about that. So you're running this business, you're getting good at things. And what is the problem that you're seeing, and who is that customer?
Okay, so
for what becomes Be Fulfilled?
Yeah, that's a good point. So Sense of Style had a really big affiliate model. So they worked with a lot of influencers and creators. My wife really developed a name for herself in that space as being someone who she paid out a lot of commission dollars to affiliates over the 17 years she ran that business, millions of dollars.
Right. So
she, by default, started to get really good relationships with a lot of these big influencers about what they wanted to do. And in about 2017, 18, you started seeing big influencers, like let's say the Kardashians, launching their own lines.
Right.
Cosmetics, apparel, and having blow up success. So that really started to feed down market to influencers who weren't as big as the Kardashians, who they wanted to run their own brands. They wanted
created some opportunity.
Yeah, they wanted to create their own brands. But the problem with a lot of these mid-sized influencers, they didn't have the infrastructure. They couldn't hire their in-house, their own experts to help them launch and run these brands.
I mean, these people, these influencers and creators are kind of solopreneurs, right?
Right.
They're kind of running this thing themselves in a way. Maybe some assistance here and there, but that's got to be really challenging for them to figure out, like, how do I create a product like the Kardashians, right? Or something that will sell. I mean, where do I start? Where do I start with the name, the design, the color, the manufacturing process?
Exactly. There's a lot of moving parts, and it can be very overwhelming, especially if you've never done it. And so we saw that. And we actually saw a few of our friends in the space try to do it themselves and run into major problems. Product that had 40% failure rates. They couldn't get enough people to ship. They were shipping the wrong way, just losing money hand over fist with what they could be doing. I mean, at Sense of Style, we had perfected, and I believe we'd perfected or gotten really good at the fulfillment process, the customer service process, the photography process, the development process. So when I looked at that, I said, why don't we package these services we're already doing internally as an external product that we can offer to other people?
Yeah.
To make it easy, to make it a subscription. Hey, you want to start a product? Sign up for our subscription. We will do these things in steps for you to help you launch a product line that you own.
So that's interesting. So Be Fulfilled basically says, look, you have a marketing channel, right? You have all of these followers, and they want to buy brands that you love. So create your own brand, your own product, and sell it to your own your own following, right?
Exactly. So when I look at the market, influencers have a lot of opportunities thrown at them, a lot of cash.
Yeah.
And what businesses are doing is they're trying to rent their influence for their own gain. It's kind of the whole idea of renting versus being an owner.
Yeah.
So our model is to allow the influencers to own their channel and to be able to take in as much of that equity and that profit from what they do versus renting it to somebody else to get a short-term pay. So the mindset has to be there that they want to build something that they can scale and grow and potentially exit one day for a large amount of cash versus renting it out constantly.
Right, exactly. It's a model that it just makes a ton of sense for those that do have a following. That's the only way to like continuously monetize that as a business rather than just, doing the work of posting and then getting paid a little bit to do that.
And it also puts the control for their growth in their hands.
Right.
If they're looking for partner deals, they have to wait till the right one comes along. They have to get the details right. And then how much of their audience will actually resonate with that message versus designing a product that resonates with their audience from day one, that they know that they can control the when, the why, and the how of that messaging.
Right. So looking back at this time, your wife, Courtney, who's running Sense of Style at this point, and you're helping her on the team. And, you're seeing some success there, but you see this opportunity with Be Fulfilled. How does that conversation go?
So we do, at the time we were doing quarterly strategic meetings.
Okay.
So every quarter we would go through a whole list, and it started with lessons learned. It would go through our strategy, where we're at, accomplishments, and we would kind of really dial in, hey guys, where are we at with our strategy? So this is the end of year of 2017. It was probably early 2018. We do a big strategic meeting with the Sense of Style leadership team.
Okay.
And we start looking at different ideas, and this idea comes up because one of our strategic initiatives was to help the micro influencer to own their influence. And we said, okay, how do we help them with that? And this idea of Be Fulfilled, what if we help them make their own product, came out of it. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. We were like, well, that's too big. Let's
seems inorganic.
Yes,
right?
Let's put that aside. And as I sat with it, I remember going to Courtney and saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to take this and run with it. And we had some conversations there about what that looked like. And at the end of the day, she's like, great, let's do it.
What were the concerns? This was a big pivot, right? This was and maybe wasn't altogether a pivot. I mean, you still have this business that is selling clothing and very successful. But starting this thing could be an argument of loss of focus or, the risk of, hey, are we going to go invest good funds into this business? I mean, what was that conversation like? What were the concerns?
To be honest, Chad, a lot of it was, I was a little bored. I wanted something to build. Yeah. I mean, when I look back and reflect, I don't think at the time I had that awareness. As I look back, I started getting a little antsy. I'd been working with her for 4 years.
Yeah.
We'd had some amazing opportunities come our way, like the lifestyle we were living of like, we could travel whenever we wanted. We spent a month in Hawaii. It was like we were hitting all these milestones of things that we'd wanted to do for years. Yeah. And yet I found myself bored. Like I knew I needed a different challenge to keep myself focused. And so that was the real conversation we started having. It's like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And she supported me. She's like, great. She saw the opportunity. There was going to be a shift in focus. Yeah. And in 2018, I ran dual positions.
Okay.
I was the founder and only person doing Be Fulfilled for a couple months and also still the COO.
How'd you deal with that?
It was a lot of work. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it was lighter load for Be Fulfilled because it was just getting started.
It was newer.
And we didn't have like new overhead. We kind of put it all as a division within the Sense of Style company, so it allowed us some, to share resources.
Yeah, right.
But I was just ready.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's what it was. I needed something, and I wanted to do something that allowed me to express my creativity and my version of how I work versus working for my wife's company and how she saw and how she wanted to work.
Yeah.
We had to work through that. That wasn't the easiest thing in our marriage. I'll be honest with you, but we had the conversations.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and it seems like it has gone well. We'll talk a little bit more about the current state of Be Fulfilled and where you guys have grown to and stuff. But in those early days, so it's you by yourself. You're still working in the same office with some of the Sense of Style team. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, great. So what did it look like? I mean, how did you create this process to then go test it? And who did you talk to first?
So we had some good friends. Once again, we had a lot of friends in the influencer space just because of my wife's business.
Right.
There was one company called High Fitness who we just loved them. They were just the two owners, Amber and Emily, were just good humans. Hank, the husband of Emily, was just a good guy. And we pitched it to him. We saw them doing product and we saw the problems that we were trying to solve.
Yeah.
They were shipping it out of their basement. It was the last thing they thought about. They wanted to do really cool product, but they didn't know where to start. And so I said, Hank, what if we did this together? He's like, when can I drop off my stuff? That was like his next call. He's like, can I get this out of my garage? I'm ready to be done with this. Because really in the e-commerce space, there's a lot of moving parts. And if you're not focused on sales and marketing, your product doesn't move.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this helped us discover, this process of experimenting with High Fitness, was as soon as we remove the weight of the logistic and operational burdens, it freed them up to focus on sales, and their sales went through the roof.
That's interesting. I mean, the creative creators, shouldn't be bogged down worrying about logistics and shipping and receiving of product and timing and design,
or how to size the right garment and how to get the right fabric. That's not how a lot of their minds work, and that's okay. So often we think, oh, I'm deficient because I don't think of that. No, you're really proficient at other things.
Right.
Focus on those. Hire on, partner with people who are good at the things you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got your first sale, right? You got your first customer.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, how'd that feel?
Felt really good. I remember, oh man, that first project we did with them I learned a ton. I was like, oh, I got to communicate with other people. I gotta get a sign off. And like I had to go through and learn a lot. And I'm very grateful of how patient they were with us during that first process. Their very first project they wanted to do a line of 70s workout gear, 70s inspired. And I hadn't done anything like that. So I had to figure it out, contact some new suppliers, really work through the logistics of it. And we got it done, and it was a success, and they loved it. And it just it gave us confidence that we could do this. And I remember one of their first purchase orders, I remember the exact amount, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing, right? And it was really fun.
I had a lot of money.
I mean, at today's numbers, not a lot, but at that point, just getting started, I was like, holy crap, we have something here. So 2018 was this year of experimenting, and I brought in some of the employees that were at Sense of Style to help. And I realized really quickly they weren't the right people. They had a different mindset. And that was a challenge all to itself.
Yeah. Tell me about that. I mean, if you had this original different business model and this business that's continuing to go, Sense of Style, your wife's running it, and you're really focusing on building this new business, and you're sharing some of these team members, at what point do you say, all right, we need to hire somebody. We need to hire somebody who's focused on this. When, what do we do?
Yeah. So 2018 was a transition year in a lot of ways. Courtney was transitioning into some different roles, running the business a little more strategically and less reliant on the friend scenario, more professional. And there were some real challenges we were facing with employees at the time. And so I had opted to ask two of the people from the leadership team to come help at Be Fulfilled. We sat down some meetings, and immediately my eyes were like, these aren't the right people. This is, but how do you say that, right? They're the right people for one business, but not for the other. And that really created some tension, and I had to work through that. Over the next 6 months, both of those individuals ended up transitioning out of both companies. And it created a space for me to really look at who would be a good fit. And I ended up bringing in a girl by the name of Sarah who did the events for Sense of Style. She was special in event marketing. And I just really liked her stability and her mindset. And so she was my very first employee at Be Fulfilled, and she was rad. She was open and really allowed me to create a job role for her in real time. Because that's not easy for everyone to accept. Like, what's your job? Well, it's to do stuff, right? People need more structure. And she was that right balance of open to do what needs to be done and helping create structure over time for herself.
Kind of a entrepreneurial mindset, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really important to be able to rely on some of these early team members because, as you know, you can't do everything. And it gets kind of crazy. So as you're getting this going, you've got a customer, right? Courtney's, heads down focusing a lot on building this new business and maybe helping generate leads, it sounds like, from some of her network. And how do you think about financing this thing, right? This thing is growing, it's validating now. You've got a customer or two, how do you think about that?
At first I didn't, if I got to be honest with you. I'm being honest with you, I didn't. I was just like, all right, we're sharing resources, head down, let's do this. And my focus was on revenue.
Yeah.
I focused on revenue, sales. And I still kind of do. It's something I've had to learn to focus on the flip side. But, I always looked at revenue cures almost all problems. Not all, but almost all.
Almost all.
Almost all. Yeah. And so I kind of went with that mindset of just grow the business. And I had a supporting team. Mainly that was Courtney.
Yeah.
To work on that back end of the finances to make sure that we had enough and it was good. And then we were very conservative with our employees. Like I was still doing my work as a COO at part-time and then doing this part-time. And so it wasn't a lot of additional cost that we brought on at the time, but we brought on a lot of extra revenue.
So did you find yourself with an expectation to bootstrap, or did you feel an immediate urgency to go to investors?
So I mentioned in that company I started with some family out of college, we went through 2 transactions. One was good, one wasn't as good for the company. And so I had some baggage around raising money, and I hesitated a lot on raising money. So I was in the mindset of bootstrap. I was ready to bootstrap this thing till the end.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And for the most part, that seemed to work out. At what point do you feel like you started really gaining traction? I mean, we're talking 2018, it's been 4 or 5 years now. When you look back at that time, where did you really start getting traction?
So 2018, we had a good year. 2019, it was like solid. I started making a few additional hires, creating a structure, kind of defining our product offering a little better. And then 2020 hit. I mean, March 2020 scared the crap out of me. Like, we didn't know what was going to happen. There's at times that we thought it was all going to go away. The whole market was going to stop. And then like April hit and e-commerce just blew up. We had 400% growth in 2020.
Wow.
And it knocked me back, like in a lot of ways. Like it was good, but it was that growth that like brings you to your knees of like, please stop. Like, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this. Like you can't hire fast enough. So your processes break down at speed and velocity. Like everything started to really, I won't say unravel, but just really feel less stable than it did at a quarter of the revenue the year prior.
Maybe describe that a little bit more, maybe there's an example or something. I think that there's a lot of businesses that look at businesses stress at only an unsuccessful phase, right? Where sales are slow and therefore I'm stressed, right? Like maybe we don't have enough money or our runway is shortened. But in your sense, it seems like it had been very stressful due to growth. So describe that.
The first 3 years and to date, it's been based on growth with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
Service-based businesses.
Yeah.
I've had to learn a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
About what and how to offer my services as a package versus a customized offering. And those early years, I was much more in the customized offering. Like, what do you need? Great. It was this hustle mentality of like making it work. And so it's been this process of shifting out of I'll do whatever you need, customer, to here is what we offer, customer. And 2020, I was still in the whatever you need mode.
Yeah.
And that actually added quite a bit of stress. And it also created challenges to continue to scale.
Why is that? If you find yourself kind of being the jack of all trades for the first, few customers, we see a lot of startups do this because, well, you need sales. And so, you find yourself being a little bit more of a yes person. And that can be a challenge later on when you have customers paying you with different expectations, right?
100%. And I was the expert.
Yeah.
And hiring people to replace my expertise was a challenge. So it all had to run through me, which created me as the bottleneck, which was the reason why I was stressed all the time.
Right.
And I wanted so badly to have my employees match that, but that's just, I don't say that's not ever the reality, but that is a bigger challenge. And I have a life history of doing product development and sales. So it was natural. But at scale, it started to break down with me being that point person. And that was my realization at the end of 2020.
Wow.
I was like, I got to figure this out. I got to create more structure and repeatability and, defined roles and SOPs. And that's kind of the journey I've been on since.
And how are you handling that? How at the time, end of 2020, how are you handling that sort of transition personally? It must have been really hard to go from being the person that knows it all to now trying to find people that can also learn it all.
I found a few good people that, once again, could work with my style, which was a little chaotic. And I've had to learn that about myself, right? That's been some awareness on this particular journey of Be Fulfilled is, what are you good at, John? And what are you not good at? And then being open and aware enough to hire people that are good at the things you're not good at.
Right.
Just like I preach with my customers, hey, you're not good at logistics. Hire us to do that. Hire us to do the development, the sourcing. We'll have a product package that we can offer you to really make this easy and clean. That's been probably, it's humbling to make mistakes and realize the mistake and the problem is you, the CEO. You're the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, most often. As you start assembling a good team, it becomes very obvious the things that you're not as good at, right?
Uh-huh.
And some leaders kind of buckle under that pressure or insecurity, and some start to thrive in it. But it's a weird transition, right? Going like the point where you start to bring people on and you find yourself becoming less busy.
You're like, what am I doing? What am I supposed to do today? Check my emails. Okay, emails are checked. Now what do I do? Like, there is some of that. Like, and like I said, I got bored at Sense of Style because I am a busybody. I need hobbies. Right. I need actions. I need things that keep my mind, engaged.
Yeah.
And what do you do when like it's not as much there? Like you start to like meddle in other people's business that you shouldn't be meddling in. You want them to do it. So that it's definitely a challenge.
So at the end of 2020, describe your team. How many people do you think you have on your team at that point? And where's your revenue at roughly? What range are you in?
All right. So at the end of 2020, we had about 7 members on the team.
Okay.
And we did $4 million in revenue.
That is a very efficient business.
It was, and it was unsustainable.
Yeah.
That was the biggest, like, I can't keep doing it like this.
How many people should you have had?
Well, a lot more. But I was bootstrapped, so it was like, all right, next order. Okay, that can make payroll. Okay, correct. Good. I can keep these people on, so I don't have to go crazy and like pull my hair out.
Well, maybe share some of the early challenges of the business and just the nature of the model and how cash flow might be difficult. I mean, for a lot of traditional SaaS businesses, technology businesses, or even regular service businesses, it's kind of simple. But when you have a customer coming in who's an influencer and they make an order for a season, right? That might come in a larger lump sum. Mm-hmm. So maybe talk about the stresses of of that or learning that new model as opposed to Sense of Style.
Yeah, we have a subscription, so there is a recurring, which is really nice. And then we work on our customers to help them design product, and like you said, it comes in seasonality or chunks. And then after that, there's the fulfillment. And so we have 3 ways that we monetize, but we are subject a little bit to our customers' whims of when they want to launch, when they want to buy. And with a smaller base, that became more of a challenge. Money would kind of come in a big order, and it'd be a few months for another big chunk came in. And it was learning, how do I predict and manage that with a handful of customers? Once now we're up to quite a few customers, it's easier to manage because you have all of them. There's a lot more diversity of like timing and product, et cetera. But at the time, there's definitely a challenge. And we decided to split the companies because of the direction they were going in 2020. Sense of Style and Be Fulfilled as one. It was at the time, it was a division. We knew to raise money and to go that path, we needed a separation. And so we started that in 2020.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this will be easy, no big deal. And all of a sudden I was like, oh shoot, I'm now on my own with these fluctuations of cash. So it forced me to hustle quite a bit more. Like understand that model, understand what triggers and what things we can do to create a more consistent cash flow.
Well, what's interesting is that, somebody will hear, all right, we're doing $4 million in revenue at this point. It's amazing, right? A startup that started just a couple years prior. That's very impressive, But what they don't see is, behind the doors of just trying to make all of that work in this very choreographed process, and that's very challenging always.
Yeah, and on top of that, the girl I'd hired in 2018 to be my first employee, she comes to me in the fall of 19. Is like, John, I've always wanted to go into real estate and I have an opportunity. And I remember this moment sitting on the couch upstairs and just tears just welled up in my eyes. And she's a friend and she actually sold us her house that we recently bought. And I consider her she's a great human and helped us a lot. But I was so like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? She's leaving and I got to do it all myself. So we're in this major scale up period, about to go crazy. And here I am just I'm losing my only core employee at that point. And then I'd hire someone else, figure that out. And it was just like, there was so much stress wrapped up in all of that. It was just a challenge.
Do you, and it's crazy because, at the time you had a business that was doing really well between, you and your wife, and she'd built an awesome business running Sense of Style. And, you had an income and maybe not quite as much risk. And here you went and signed up to go do it again.
Like I told you, the rationale behind it is I was bored. I mean, and I say that with a little tongue in cheek. Like, I've always had this goal to start and run my own business.
Yeah.
And the business I started with family out of college wasn't my business.
Right.
I was an equity owner, but it just never was quite there.
Yeah.
And we had some venture and some traditional guys come in, and they were the majority owners. And then at my wife's business, it was her business, not mine. Right. And so there was this, and I look back at that, I said, hey, was that ego? Or was that like, is this what I really want? And I don't know that I know the answer to that yet, but I knew I wanted something that would provide fulfillment for me and what I wanted to do. And so like at the end of the day, that's why I did it. And we did risk more. Yeah. And we risk more now than had we gone a different route.
Absolutely. And it's paying off.
Well, no risk, no reward, guys.
Exactly.
I mean, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So you go into 2021. How's growth looking at that point? You've already started assembling a team, got a few million in sales at this point. What does the next step look like?
So at the end of 2020, so we're in the first quarter of 2021. I'm a little distraught.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. 2020 was just brutal. You mix COVID on top of supply chain issues, on top of explosive growth, employee, like there's just a laundry list of stuff that was just stressful. And going from thinking you're going to lose it all in March to having your best months ever and blowing all your records out of the water and like 3 months later, like the emotional roller coaster of that took a toll. Like it was a long year.
And is it going to last?
Yeah. Is it going to last? Is like e-commerce going to stay up like this? We don't know. And so I remember it was about February and I had recently taken up like a meditation practice and I was meditating and I had this flood of just coming to my mind of like, you need to build a platform that puts all of these steps into an easy to follow product offering that creates just standardization for everyone and clarity. And it was like, whoa. okay. All right. And I just kind of, it was a very vague, broad, but I had some like, and then I started really designing it, thinking about it quite a bit of like, how could this work? And it really started to get me excited about, all right, this is the path to a future scalable business that I can take well beyond what we did in 2020.
So what was that problem that you're talking about, you're starting to solve? What was the problem that you were experiencing with your customers, maybe as a service?
Okay. That's a very good question. So when you design, I'll use apparel. Let's use a t-shirt as an example, something very basic.
Yeah.
I'll have a customer come to me and say, John, I want to create the most kick-ass t-shirt out of this type of fabric, and I want to cut like this. I want to do, and they give me their vision.
Yeah.
So I have to make that vision reality, all the way from ideation to sampling to manufacturing to importing to merchandising to shipping. So there's a lot of steps. And we had a sauna built out. We had all these different project management tools that we're trying to make work. And they were one-sided, meaning my team could see them. And if I wanted to put any sort of confidential information in there, I couldn't ever share it with the customer.
Right.
So we saw that there were a lot of steps, and there are these certain steps that started to slow us down. And usually that was engage with the customer to get their approval. And all of a sudden, like, our progress would just slow down and stop. Why? Because they didn't know what they didn't know, and they didn't have the visuals or the way. So everything became like a one-off presentation, a phone call, a meeting to get approvals.
This is all new for them, right?
It's all new for them.
I mean, they kind of don't even have a baseline of expectation.
Right. And if they don't have a baseline of expectation, they can oftentimes feel like, well, I don't know what Beefieville's doing for me. What's the value they're providing to me? And so the value conversation would sometimes get offline because they thought it should happen in 2 weeks, and maybe the standard process is 4 weeks.
Right.
And so we had to create this platform that allowed them to see and communicate with us and see their progress and to feel part of the journey with us so that they get engaged and they make decisions quicker, and it shrinks our overall design time and our time to revenue down by 50%. And that's what we've been experimenting with.
So that's a big deal. I mean, you're looking at saying, all right, well, we've learned these processes. We've learned this industry in sets of style. We created this brand, we created this business, and pieced together what we think is a great service. It's growing, you're hiring people, and then you think it's getting messy. And if we don't figure out a way to clean this up, we're not going to be able to scale. And so at that point, you say, all right, let's build software.
It's like, and so as a background, like, my degree that I almost didn't get at BYU was in information systems, right? So like, that's systems, that's always been something that I understood and I get. And I've always had the little bit of like this tech bug. Like, I've always wanted to do something in that space. So this is where you come in the picture, Chad.
Yeah.
February of 2021, I remember reaching out. You and I had met through a mutual friend, and I just really liked your perspective on a couple bigger picture items. Like, I like this guy, Chad. His mindset's great.
Appreciate that.
And I remember texting you a little bit out of the blue because we didn't have a real tight relationship.
We hadn't talked for a couple of years.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, Chad, can I bounce something off you? I think I'd known that you had left Jump at that point and we're doing another project. I didn't know all the details. And I was like, Chad, let me, I remember going to your office and on your whiteboard scribbling up with my chicken scratch, like the concept. And you're like, I think you have something here, John.
Yeah. And
that was a validation that I needed to, like, okay, am I crazy? Is this possible? Or is someone else, is there a validated concept and idea?
Well, my impression at the time was that you were solving a real problem for real people. I mean, influencers have a tiger by the tail, right? They have an audience that is watching closely and will buy what they say to buy, but they have no idea how to do it.
They have no idea how to own that.
Correct.
They keep renting it. Renting it's easy.
Yeah.
They've made it easy. There's software platforms, apps to rent your influence.
Right.
All over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So you get going, you start building a team. You start writing code and getting through this process, and now it's been a couple of years since 2020. Well, going on 2.5 years now, right?
Oh my gosh.
Or more.
Woo.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. Tell us a little bit about today. What do things look like? And Tell us about how it's been.
So, building the app's been its own journey. At first, I was the point person, and I was like, oh, dude, I can't keep selling and growing the business and being the person over this large and very strategic, development process that I'm going to invest a lot of money in. A lot of this free cash flow is going straight to that.
Yeah.
So I ended up bringing in a person to help build and develop the platform. And that was a big stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge investment in someone that's not not revenue creating. Correct. It's all cost center.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to do that if I wanted the platform I wanted. So we did that. And that was stressful. That put stress on the business from a financial perspective.
Right.
But we kept growing.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, we got this.
Yeah.
We got this. And, I really love bootstrapped companies because I get to make the decisions. I get to do what I want to do. I get to be strategic in this way, but it does hinder you in making long-term investments in marketing, sales, and people.
Yeah.
And I think I've reached that point where right now I'm actively fundraising, right? And I see that the number one thing slowing me down is money to grow a team to sell the product that we've created.
Right.
And bootstrapping is great, but it doesn't give you that runway to make big bets on yourself.
Interesting. That's a good way to put that. I mean, your business has got to a place where you've definitely proved this concept.
Uh-huh.
The market needs it, wants it, continues to buy it. And you get to a point where you almost feel like, due to lack of cash flow, maybe you're hindering what it could be.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of I think the challenge. A lot of young founders will come to me, or you hear them talk, and different events and networking events and stuff. And most of the time it's, do I raise or do I not raise under $1 million of revenue? So it's always very early stage stuff. The truth is when your business gets pretty large, it's almost like a pendulum. The larger it gets, the more likely it is a scenario where you should raise capital. Not always. You and I both have a friend who's bootstrapped over 15 years or so and has grown to tens of millions of revenue and done it really well. And he's kind of a small exception that can do that.
Well, I look at, it's the different models. If you're going service-based where you're taking cash up front, you can maybe bootstrap, but also the value of what you're creating is potentially smaller.
Yeah.
So to create these scalable models, I think it really requires some big investment into systems and platforms to be able to scale it to these higher valuations and these higher value, just value created items. And so I've kind of had to learn that the hard way. Yeah. I mean, the last year has been one of the harder years of the journey because of the financial stress.
Yeah.
We're profitable.
Yeah.
It's cash flow. Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
And I think, I know that difference. I learned it in school. I understand it very, consciously, but I think the reality of living it is very different. You're like, well, why don't we have cash when we're posting record sales? It creates this new challenge. So we're almost too successful for the financial model that we have to back us.
Right.
And so I've had to learn that the real hard way. And I'm kind of the salesman where I'm always betting on the next sale. I'm like, no, we're gonna close that cash gap because I'm gonna close these 3 deals and we're gonna get there. And I've had to really back up because I'm trying to really make this into a systematic process where it's not me. I have people who are closing sales consistently, and we're not looking for that big sale. We're looking for small iterative sales that continue to grow our base.
And again, that's interesting because, I had another guest on and we were talking about the idea that we think like we get happy or satisfied when we get to this big point. And a lot of times it's when we raise money. And and for you, even though you haven't raised institutional money yet, you have grown sales a lot, and I'm going to ask you about that in a minute.
All right.
Where you guys are at or what you think you'll do this year. But, that's still very impressive, yet still comes with different types of stresses. The larger business isn't less stressful.
No, it actually gets more stressful. Employee counts go up.
Yeah.
Time requests go up. Like I'm struggling with that right now. Like I look at my schedules on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'm in meetings 4 to 5 hours a day.
And podcasts.
These are the good hours you get to spend versus in some meeting, which I actually skipped to come here. I was like, guys, I can't make that meeting. I got this. and like my creative time, my sales time is limited by administration and other requirements to run an organization the size that we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big questions, where do you think you'll be at the end of this year?
I'll be happy. I'll be in Hawaii. That's where I'm going to be. Chad, does that answer your question?
No, kind of. No, I really, well, let's at least say this. I know you guys for sure will have doubled even revenue from
Correct.
where you were prior, and have shown really, really impressive growth, bootstrapped, again, there are many startups that'll raise $10 million and be lucky to get to 2 million, of revenue. And so it's really impressive to see where you guys have taken this thing in a short amount of time.
Well, I appreciate that. And the biggest thing I always want to share with people is like, it's taken its toll. Like, I think I'm learning this, and I can only speak to the bootstrap model.
Yeah.
Bootstrap model takes a toll emotionally, physically, and that's something you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't come from deep pockets. Like my wife and I, everything that we created via ourselves. I mean, not to say we didn't have a great start, but like, so, I'm reliant on first my team and myself to make that happen. And then on a few small bank loans.
Yeah.
And the banks are tough right now.
For sure.
They don't want to lend anything. They're like, oh, how much do you have in profit? Great. I will lend you slightly less than that, so that, it's just like their models break down in a high growth business. And so, I've had to learn the hard way, I think, when to raise money. I think I probably waited longer than I should have. And so that stress has just been high.
Yeah, definitely. Nonetheless, you've grown. You have a team, and you have customers, and there's a lot of good things going on.
Oh, for sure.
I know. Be Fulfilled has a lot of growth left in it, and thank you for coming to share, your story and how there are no instructions on how you build a business.
No instructions.
Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.